All right, welcome into Around the Felt, guys. We're going to be starting a new series here, starting out with the Washington Commanders. We got superfan Mr. Walmart with us tonight. We got Colin, my co-host, and obviously myself, Regon. And we're going to be breaking down the Commanders, giving them a grade on what we thought of 2024. Then we're going to get into like where they can go in the offseason with free agency and the draft and, kind of our expectations for next year. So how you guys doing?
Doing great, man. This one's going to be a tough episode for me, along with most of the NFC East, because it's going to be giving good grades out until my Giants for the most part. Dallas, a little iffy, but we're going to start with the Commanders here, and I'm going to have to talk very glowingly of them, and it's not going to be fun for the next 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Well, why don't we give the floor to the Commanders fan? What grade did you give them?
Yeah, so I kind of went an A here. I didn't quite give him the A+, just because I think only way you would get an A+ is winning the Super Bowl. But A, very deservingly so. New regime. Over 54% of the roster from the year prior is different from this past year, which is the largest overhaul in NFL history. And then obviously you got a rookie quarterback. And anytime you have a rookie quarterback, there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with that. And that kid answered the bell every single time, twice on Sundays. The poise, the clutch factor. I think Dan Quinn is a great culture builder and built a great structure and a base and a foundation that we can now build on. So, yeah, I got to give him an A for sure.
Colin, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I also gave him an A. Same thought process here. A+ reserve. It's tough not to give him an A+. I thought about it. I was like,
So did I.
The only other grade I have as an A+ for any of these teams is the Eagles, the team that won the Super Bowl. But when you go from picking second in the draft to the next season falling in the NFC Championship to the eventual Super Bowl champions, it was very tempting to give an A+ here. You look at the turnaround offensively, the sacks way down. Part of that is the improved offensive line. Also, a big part of that is Jaden Daniels and his ability to maneuver around the pocket. They had the 7th-ranked total offense, 5th in scoring. That's ridiculous. It wasn't just what Jaden Daniels did with his arms and obviously his legs, but also the rushing game got much better. Brian Robinson had a very strong season for this team. There's no doubt Jaden Daniels, generational quarterback, and you just see how quickly you can turn your franchise around if you do hit on one of those guys in the draft. What really stood out to me was how Dan Quinn transformed this defense. And you also look at how Dallas's defense took a big step back this year. And you're like, no Dan Quinn, goes to Commanders. What happens? Defense significantly better. And particularly on the back end, the secondary, they were the third best pass defense in football, which last year, this, Walmart, I was targeting in fantasy and in the gambling world, the Washington Commanders secondary on repeat. And I found out in October of this year, maybe that's not the best strategy anymore. And they moved on from Emmanuel Forbes, but it didn't matter. They found the right guys, and Dan Quinn got this defense on the right track. And they hit on a lot of veteran free agent signings that people were kind of giving them a little slack for last offseason. Like, you're a young team. You have completely have to re-overhaul this roster. Why are you signing old heads like Wagner and Ertz and Eckler? And you see the culture that they helped build, which was another awesome thing that he did. The last thing I will say, Terry McLaurin, best season of his career, a guy that's been so underappreciated, absolutely balled out when you got a quarterback. Just from a personnel standpoint, you got to feel happy for the guy, and that was another positive for the Commanders.
To Tong, I just want to point out that someone that was shitting on some of the offseason moves that Washington made might be your co-host, Tom.
I'm glad you brought that up because I had to post up. And that's a good point. I know my last name's actually Losher, so you probably meant to say that, but I see here in the comments, Tong32 goes, yeah, 5-12 season incoming. Walmart goes, at Saquon, can you get this guy a tissue?
That's a great receipt right there, dude. I did not expect a 12-5 season. Who did? Who did, though? That one, I'll take it on the chin.
Yeah, you will take that on the chin like a good boy, as will I. Who, I happen to take it a little further than maybe a comment. I may have made a video saying, I believe I gave them a C-
Oh, C minus, even worse. Yeah, there you go.
You know, I really didn't like these offseason moves. I didn't think they'd compete like that right away. You know, bringing in a lot of veteran guys who I thought were cooked at that point. You know, Bobby Wagner, obviously a high tackle guy, but I thought he was on the back end. Austin Eckler, I really didn't see a future for him. Obviously, you know, he wasn't the Austin Eckler of the Chargers, but he definitely had a very nice role carved out there. You know, Frankie Louvu, maybe that was me just being a hater as a Jet fan, but obviously he, you know, really was a big impact player there. Jeremy Chinn as well. So a lot of these guys I questioned, you know, where they were at and kind of was like viewed it as my own franchise, the Jets, where, you know, we had money, we threw it at these Band-Aids, but these guys ended up working out. You know, Dan Quinn had these guys playing well. So I gave him an A+. I'm not a hater like you guys. I'm going to give them their flowers.
Oh, he did give them the plus.
There's no reason to not give them an A+, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, they could have won a Super Bowl, but it was house money at that point. I don't know how you can give it anything but an A+. I mean, this season was a smashing success. I mean, to say like, you know, if they won the Super Bowl, listen, if you told any Commanders fan, really any NFL team that they'd be in the playoffs, let alone, you know, the NFC Championship game, I think they would call that an A+ season. So I'm going to go up based off of that. I mean, the defense, you know, that would be my big point of focus for the offseason, but the offense was sick. I mean, Jaden Daniels, most people would probably put him as the number 1 quarterback in the draft. I don't know if I would. Maybe Caleb. No, just going for clicks at this point. But in all seriousness, I mean, Jaden Daniels at this point, I think, is regarded as, you know, right outside the top 5. I know some people will make a case for it. I would say, you know, for me, I firmly have him at 6. You know, you could argue maybe even top 5, but still, even putting him in that conversation in year 1 just speaks to how good he is. I mean, McLaurin obviously finally has a legit quarterback, and we saw what he could do. You know, they did have a lot of luck this year, so I will say temper your expectations slightly next year. It seemed like everything went their way this season. You know, really looking at that Bears game, I mean, how many times do you see a team went off a Hail Mary like that? But guess what? I mean, those are the magical seasons that teams can have, and that's one the Commanders had. So I'll give them an A+, and, you know, I really look forward to seeing what they can do next year. And I think, unfortunately, they're a team that, you know, gets screwed over having to be in the division with the Eagles, because it's going to be tough for them to win the division. So I see a very similar feat for them next year, where you're a double-digit win team, but still you're going on the road in the first round.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that Bears game, because I think it was on your guys' pod. I think Tong might have mentioned it, where after that Bears game, the collapse of Chicago happened, and the rise of us, like the record differential after that game for both teams is night and day. It's literally opposite. So it's like, yeah, look, I understand, and I've told my buddies this. I understand, like, it's hard to hold Jaden to the standard of what he did this year going into next year. I mean, you saw what happened with Stroud. Like, he might take a slight step back, whatever it might be, but, you know, as long as he doesn't fucking fully collapse, like, I'm good. You know, like, I'm cool. Like, I know he's the guy. I know he is the guy. So, like, as long as we're in that playoff, you know, we're in the playoff talks, we're in, you know, contention, I'm happy.
Yeah, and the nice thing about him is he's way more dynamic than Stroud. I mean, Stroud doesn't add that rushing aspect that Jaden does. So even if Jaden maybe takes a step back as a passer, I don't think the rushing ability will change. If anything, I would think it may go up more this season as people start to adjust to him as a passer. Yeah, and you know, it's funny with the Chicago thing. That one really hurt the wallet. I remember my greedy ass had like a cash out option of $700. I'm like, nah, come on, I want to win 1,000. And then I see that, and I'm just like, why do I even gamble? That's one where it's just like, why?
Yeah.
Why? And yeah, I think Chicago, they lost like 8 and then won the final game against Green Bay.
Yeah, and I mean, and like keeping Cliff, I think, is a huge, like, underrated thing for Jaden, because you see like how many quarterbacks deal with the constant overhaul and changes to the play caller or even the head coach, and it's just all it does is hurt him. So to have another year for Jaden to get comfortable under him, and then eventually, Cliff might move on after that, but hopefully he's got his feet set and he's ready to go with it. Doesn't matter who the play caller is, you know.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it takes just Now you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably system-proof now, but to your point, it certainly helps getting that second year under his belt. Usually, like, a rookie quarterback struggles in that first year, then they clean house. It's a problem. I think Jaden proved that doesn't matter really who his OC is next year. I don't think he's going to struggle. Granted, we did just see C.J. Stroud take a step back after people were anointing him the next big thing, so you never know. But I think just how good Jaden was is a big factor, which like convinced Cliff to come back as well. He's like, why would I have a great thing going right here. The fucking Cardinals are still paying my salary.
Yep.
I'm still getting paid in millions by the Cardinals. I don't need
Yep.
to go for big game hunting and try to get a head coaching job. I got a great thing here. Let me rock with Jaden for a little bit, see if we can do some real damage before I go to my next opportunity, and he can kind of pick a spot, similar like what Ben Johnson just did.
Well, and I would think if Ben Johnson didn't go to the Bears, I fully think Cliff would have been their coach. I think the only reason he's not the coach is because Ben Johnson took the job. I think that was their number 2 candidate, would be pairing Caleb back up with his college OC.
Certainly could have been. Yeah.
And also, I think it's proven. I mean, only the best quarterbacks can switch coordinators, consistently every year and still produce.
Absolutely.
So,
all right, let's talk about the offseason a little bit here, guys. The Commanders have $75 million in cap space, one of the highest totals in the league. They do have some key free agents from this team. Some of those vets that we mentioned earlier: Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Jeremy Chinn, Dante Fowler, who had a phenomenal season for them, led the team with 10.5 sacks, former Gator, go Gators, and De'Ami Brown. So, some key pieces there, but nothing too backbreaking, I don't think. I mean, I'm sure Bobby Wagner will probably want to come back after the year they had being a veteran leader. But Walmart, what do you think they should do?
Yeah, for sure, man. So when it comes to re-signing guys, I think Ertz, Wagner, and Chinn are must re-signs. I think we saw how valuable a veteran tight end is to a young quarterback, and that's exactly what Ertz is.
Get him out. Get him out. I want Ben Sinnott season, and I want it now. Get him out. Don't spend your money on that old man. Get Ben Sinnott in there and let him cook.
Yeah, the thing about Sinnott is that he's more of like an H-back. He's more of like a use check kind of guy that, like, he's a great, elite level blocker, and, like, he can catch, but he's not going to, like, be dynamic outside of that. He's not going to run great routes. He's not going to find, like, Zach Ertz found holes in the defense and planted himself there and made it so easy for Jaden to, when he's rolling out, make him the first guy to, that he sees.
It just sucks because of the capital they gave up on him.
Yeah,
like the second round pick to not even like be using them. It's tough to see.
Yeah, now we do run some 2 tight end sets, but yeah, for the most part, like, he's getting underutilized, but he's young, and like, to be able to have, we're in a position where, like, hey, we can go win it, so let's go try to win it and keep a vet like that's a good player. So I think Bobby Wagner is the heart and soul of our defense. Him and Luvu have been, like, you could just see all over social media, just like the way the players talk about him. That's our guy. I mean, and he had a good year this year. He had another good year. It looks like he's aging like fine wine. And then Chinn's a must sign. He balled out, one of the top safeties in the league this year. And I think Quinn is so good at utilizing guys that can kind of play multiple different positions. And that's a guy like Chinn. He can kind of come down into the box and play backer as well. But free agent wise, I think I want another corner. DJ Reed or Charvarius Ward would be great. I think Ward makes even more sense just because of that Adam Peters connection that he has from San Francisco. Yeah. So it just makes sense. If we bring him in, that means that we really liked him. So that would fire me up. Obviously, I think if we got T. Higgins, that would be pretty cool.
Signs point to a franchise tag. That was the report today.
Yeah,
they're probably going to tag him, but I mean, it's a $26 million hit for Cincinnati. That's pretty fucking tough. They'd have to negotiate something there if he were to stay in Cincinnati.
Right, and you still got to pay Jamar. You still got to pay Trey Hendrickson. So there's work to be done there. So if we could get T, a big physical receiver like that, who's obviously young and right on that elite side of it, like, could be elite, could not be. Pair him up with Terry, give another option to Jaden would be awesome. And then lastly, signing Ronnie Stanley. Specifically right tackle was our worst O-line position last year. Kick some guys over, move him over, whatever it might be. But if you can get a guy like Ronnie Stanley on your team, I think protecting Jaden, that'd be huge for us. So free agency wise, that's what I would do. Are we doing trades too or not?
I mean, if there's some guys you think would be a good target, absolutely. You're going big fish hunting though.
We're going big fish. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we have all the pieces. Look, so I did touch on Myles Garrett. In an ideal world, we trade for Myles without giving up 2 firsts, but I don't see that happening. So trade wise, it's tough. there's guys out there that I like a lot. Actually, another Browns, Jeremiah Okay. I love him. I think he would be a great guy to go get for this team. But yeah, trading wise, I'm not, outside of Myles Garrett, I didn't add too much to it. So, and then draft, we're doing draft yet or no?
Yeah, you can get in the draft.
Okay. So I only did first 3 rounds draft. Round 1, I would love to get Jack Sawyer out of OSU or Nick Scorton out of A&M. I just think we need an edge presence, and both those guys are like certified dogs. I think that we could potentially get later on in the back half of the draft. And maybe even trade up if you really like them that much and you think they might go. Round 2, I love Trey Harris from Ole Miss. Love him. I think he's gonna be a dog. And it kind of goes along with what we need, a bigger physical guy that just adds to a receiver room that doesn't have it. We don't have that. We never really have in recent history. Terry's great, but he's not, he's not going to impose his will on you, So, and then round 3, this might be questionable, but if he's there, Quinshon Judkins, I would love. Woo! I think B-Rob and Eckler were okay this year. I really think they started out a lot hotter than they finished. In the playoffs, they were non-existent. Jaden was our whole run game. So if you can add a guy like Judkins, pair him up with B-Rob, 2 young guys, 2 young, could be studs, and honestly move on from Eckler, I wouldn't hate it at all. But
that's a solid plan, dude. That's a good draft. You got lucky in what you had on the board there. Let me just say that. I don't see Judkins being there at the end of the 3rd, but that'd be a smash. Yeah. Run the card in if you get Judkins there.
We have an early 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, still, I think he's a round 2 guy, but still, I mean, he could be there. He could be there. I like that play. I like that play. Reagan, what are you thinking? What should the Commanders do this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would like to see them, try to go out and get an offensive lineman in free agency. For the wide receiver, honestly, I understand, like, it would be nice to get a big name next to Terry, but I'd rather see them maybe take a shot on 2 veteran wide receivers. I'd like to see them actually go out and get Elijah Moore. I like what he has to offer. I think was very underutilized in Cleveland. I mean, he showed some flashes with Joe Flacco. And then on the Jets, he showed a lot of flashes. He had 1 year where he was their number 1. So I feel like they can get him on a cheap deal. He's still younger and could kind of fit in nice as number 2. He has the ability to play in the slot and on the outside, so he's dynamic. I also wouldn't hate it if they tried to go get Marquise Brown. Obviously a very down year with injuries, but he's a speedster. So I'd say, hey, take the risk on that. Maybe take some flyers versus, throwing all that money they have. Because I think, ultimately, I don't know if a T. Higgins fully puts them over the top. So I'd rather see them, try to plug some more holes and really solidify it where, I think ultimately it comes down to defense. So I don't know, maybe I still don't hate the Myles Garrett thing. Like, I feel like that's the big boom splash play you got to do. So how do you do that? Probably giving up capital. So you're probably not using some of those picks you said before, but
we're not getting Jack Sawyer. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're not getting Jack Sawyer. So I think that would be a move I'd rather see them do is, keep a lot of that money to make a big splash play for Myles Garrett. And then, try to take some flyers on the offensive side of the ball. Because clearly it worked last year, taking some flyers.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of you guys are saying. I think they need to add another weapon alongside Terry. A guy that kind of stuck out to me was Hollywood Brown. I think he'd be a nice little compliment to Terry, his ability to get down the field. And we saw how good of a deep ball Jaden has. So I think that could be something that could take that offense to the next level, like a guy that takes the top off the defense. Obviously a little underwhelming in KC when he got back from the injury. Wasn't great, but, a full offseason healthy, I think Hollywood would be a nice guy. And this defense, although they turned it around in the pass game, they were 30th against the run. So I do want to bring Bobby Wagner back here. And I think the free agent that makes the most sense for them is in the interior defensive line, Osi Odigizua from the Cowboys. Come over, follow Dan Quinn. Had a really good back half of the season for Dallas. He's the top interior defensive lineman, in my opinion, in this free agency class. And I think it just makes a lot of sense with the Dan Quinn ties. And I also think they need an edge rusher. Like, they traded Sweat. You moved on from Chase Young. Like, they were fine this year, but you need a guy, and there's 3 big names at the top of this class. If you can't get a Myles Garrett via trade, Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick. A little questionable there with Reddick after what we just saw with the Jets, but you got to trust Dan Quinn at this point, a culture setter that maybe if he gets him in the building, you can get that Reddick that you saw from 2-3 years ago.
Not a fan of that guy.
Last thing I will say is I think the Myles Garrett thing just doesn't – I would love it, but it doesn't make sense for what Adam Peters' history really says. And if you look at San Fran, he's big on building the team through the draft, building the roster through the draft, and then kind of supplementing through free agency. So kind of getting, like the couple guys that, you're not quite sure about through free agency that end up balling out, and then really truly building through the draft. So giving up 2 firsts for Myles Garrett would be tough. I would love giving up a first and like a Deron Payne or a first and a Jonathan Allen. That would be cool. And then lastly, I want to know your guys' opinion. What about Cooper Kupp going to Washington? How would you like that?
I could see that working out for him. Cooper Kupp could run the slot. I mean, they just showed they had success with vets, right? So right. If Adam Peters believes it's the right move, he just showed you that this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I would say, as long as they're not giving up assets, I'd like it more if they just let him get cut and go and sign him. Like, I wouldn't want them to give up anything of significance to go get him.
Probably worth a 5th round pick because you're going to eat a decent amount of the money. And the Commanders are one of those teams that can eat that money.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, it's definitely like probably more proven at this point than, Hollywood or Elijah Moore. But, Kupp just doesn't have the age on his side. And I'd say he's definitely on the decline. But then again, like, your window is now with Jaden, like you're not paying him yet. So it's obviously you were a game away from the Super Bowl. So why not? So, yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, Trock, what do you got for the questions?
What up, gentlemen? Happy President's Day. I had a lovely day off today. I don't know about you guys and what your organizations did for you, but I had a very well-rested day today. So.
Oh, I don't remember giving you off.
Okay. Yeah, no, I did take off. I didn't file for PTO, so fuck you. All right, let's dive into the first question tonight. Mr. Pop-Tart, do you think the Commanders can sustain what we saw last season, knowing their history of typically being a one-season wonder, and how do they close the huge gap between them and the Eagles?
I mean, I certainly think they could be a playoff team next year. I mean, why not? They're way ahead of schedule. I think they'll make the necessary moves to remain competitive. I think they know what their weaknesses are after this past season. Hopefully it's not a one and done like my 2022 Giants and they get a little ahead of themselves and start giving out some fat contracts and it all backfires. But with Jaden Daniels at the helm, that seems very unlikely. I mean, yeah, your window is now open thanks to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pop-Tart. All right, first of all, all right, we have a rough past, but I'd say the difference between now and then is Dan Snyder. We don't have him anymore. He's gone, and that's the guy that kind of consistently brought the culture and the environment in the organization down. And those one-hit wonder seasons, the RG3 years where he's forced to go back into the game, that doesn't happen if we don't have Dan Snyder in there, right? So a lot of those what-if things that happened in Washington's past, I think, yeah, of course they could happen again. But I think with the fact that Dan Snyder out of there and should be in prison, scumbag. But the fact that he's out of there, I think just completely turns around the view that you should have on this organization. It's a completely new team.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they probably will make the playoffs. I don't know why. I feel like they might take a step back. I still think they'll ultimately make it, but I just find it hard to believe that the ball, every bounce goes their way. So I think teams will adjust. I'm not saying Jaden's going to have a huge step back, but I think he will slump a little bit. So I view this team more as maybe, a 10-7 team next year versus a 12-5, maybe even a 9-8, but they still get in because the NFC is still very weak. But it really depends on how the draft goes, how their offseason goes. Do they hit on a lot of these guys? Are they able to find the same success with a lot of these filler type players? And ultimately, I think they will. But it's hard for me to envision them going 12-5 again next year. It's just, I imagine Dallas will be better. Philly's obviously a juggernaut. And I mean, those New York Giants, watch out. But I'm not sure. I don't know. What is the strength of schedule for them? How is it looking next year? Is it harder than this year?
We play the AFC West, right? We play
Yeah.
We play the
So that's gonna
Chiefs,
be
Chargers, Broncos.
I think the NFC North too,
Yeah,
which is tough.
yeah. So not great. Yeah,
so,
not great.
And I mean, with that being said, I mean that obviously that just tells you, and it's always tough traveling out west, being on the East Coast. But still, ultimately, I mean, if you don't make the playoffs next year and take another step forward, things are gonna have to change. But we shall see. We shall see.
We shall see. All right, gents. Thank you for joining us, Walmart. That wraps up our Commanders 2024 season grades.